We're back. Season 7, Episode 14, Fame and Misfortune. And I forgot to update the thing, but whatever, nobody cares. Where do I begin? I really didn't remember this one at all. This was in basically every way me watching an episode for the first time, which is going to start being a little more of a thing the more we go in on this, I think. And will literally be a thing once we get to season 8, which is not that far off. Yeah, a few more months. Let's cover the behind-the-scenes stuff that I'm aware of that I'd managed to find after about 5 minutes of frenetic searching really quick. First of all, this came out during BronyCon. That was a terrible idea. Let me relate something to all y'all. This is going to come up later, and I'm going to bring this point up again, but I don't really have any say in the MLP fandom. I've never been a part of it, and I never will, and I have no exposure to that, but I have exposure to plenty of other fandoms. Let me share one with you. You ever heard of a game called Diablo? Most often referred to as Diablo. But screw it, I'm going to keep pronouncing it that way, because screw all y'all. You ever heard of Diablo? It's a cool game series. It's got some great stuff. Great gameplay, excellent world building, wonderful atmosphere, big co-op folks. Great stuff, right? Great stuff. Traditionally PC games, there have been some console ports, but they are still, PC games that were ported to console. You with me so far? Some of you probably already actually have figured this out, but the parallel I'm making is that they announced a Diablo mobile game. Now let's go ahead and get this out of the way. That's a dumb idea. However, that's an idea that people could have at least maybe swallowed if they had done it better. They announced, a Diablo Immortal mobile game at BlizzCon as the Diablo thing. Hey! No plans to make this come out on PC. The presentation, it was already a bad idea, but it could have worked. It may even be a good game. But the fact is, the way they presented it, the way they built up to it, it was just, I'm not going to go over all the details, because I already have. I've already covered this. It was train wreck after train wreck after train wreck after train wreck, and they just kept screwing it up. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. If you're going to do an episode entirely about fandom, even if it's a good episode or it's a bad episode or you have a legitimate point or whatever, don't release that during your major convention of fans. God. This also is not helped by the fact that several people, Larson, have gone out of their way repeatedly. I have found multiple interviews by M.A. Larson absolutely shredding this episode and doing everything he possibly can to distance himself from it. Now, I want to cover something that some of you are probably aware of, but may have never consciously thought about. A really common thing that tends to happen is there's someone who is related to a specific work, a movie, game, show, book, comic, whatever, right? And it's a badly received work, and so they, in an effort to not be tainted with that same brush, distance themselves from it as much as they can. This is actually pretty common. It's one of the reasons I have so much respect for Brannon Braga, because he didn't do that. Brannon Braga owned the fact that he wrote crap, owned up to the fact that he screwed up, and apologized at a Trek convention, no less. Nimoy did do this with Spock, and then he flipped around on that one. But the point is, this people distancing themselves from a work is the commonality. And I mentioned that because, let's go ahead and be honest, this isn't that bad of an episode. It does have a few flaws, and I'll discuss that as we go through, but it's a reasonably acceptable episode. It's just it was badly received, and so Larson crapped all over it because distance. Now, that is theory. I don't know if that is why Larson has distanced himself from this or not. I just wanted to point that out because it's impossible not to talk about that when talking about this episode. Do I think this episode fits better in Season 5? I mean, obviously, yes, this is a Season 5 episode. Let's just call it what it is. I'm sure most of you noticed that Spike changed his voice a little bit to sound a little bit more like Starlight and was wearing his Starlight costume this episode. I don't know that for total certainty, but that's totally what it is. I'm dead serious. Rewatch the episode sometime. Listen to the dialogue listen to the dialogue Starlight says. Those are Spike's lines. I actually paid attention. There are 2 lines in the entire episode that Starlight says that are Starlight's voice. All the rest are... I should explain this really quick. For those of you not aware, it's actually another fairly common thing where a writer will write, character A, and then they'll have actor B and person B play that character. So it's a different character, but the writer was writing the original character. This is something that's been coming up in the Enterprise Ruminations, for example, because the writers have been writing Archer as Janeway. It's a different actor in a different circumstance, but the writing is the character of Janeway, right? Some people thought I've been doing this on accident, where I will periodically call Archer Janeway. That's on purpose. I've been doing that deliberately. That does stop eventually. Archer finally does become his own character later, but that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And yeah, Kira, very early DS9, they fixed that early. But for example, in Emissary, that's Ro Laren. And if you listen to the lines and if you pay attention, then yeah, no, that's Ro Laren. That's not Kira. You'll notice Emissary's Kira doesn't really fit with the rest of Kira, and that's why. I mean, that's early installment weirdness is a common thing, but that's the specific reason. Anyways, I point that out because that's probably the most obvious thing I noticed in this episode specific, is that Starlight was Spike. With 2 exceptions. I should have written down the specific exceptions. One of them was, actually, I did write down one of them, which was, really? Are you attacking my friend because you want to be in a book? That's Starlight. Notice she's actively threatening the dude and lifting him like 20 feet in the air, and that's Starlight. Anyways, so let's rewind here a bit. We haven't even really started talking about the episode. I suppose I should talk about one other thing, though, because I looked it up. Some people think, and maybe it's true, that this episode is mocking fandom, right? Now, we're going to discuss the specifics of that later, okay? Let's just presume for a moment that this is an episode mocking fandom. How many of you know Animaniacs? We'll start with that. Have you ever seen the Animaniacs episode where they mock fandom? Let's date this for a second. That was the 90s. About 96. No, you know what? We can go further. How many of you are familiar with Get a Life? Okay, real talk. How many of you are actually familiar with that? How many of you have seen the original SNL skit that started that? That would have been 1986, by the way. For those of you not aware, you can YouTube it. It's just up on YouTube. It's like an 8-minute sketch. Back in the day, William Shatner did a brief, not all that funny sketch where he gets up on a podium and is like, blah, 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 and there's some fans. It's the same thing. It's making fun of the mega fans. And I'm going to use that terminology distinctly, by the way. We're going to come up with that in a minute. He's making fun of the mega fans, and he says the line, "Get a life." Get a life. He doesn't say it that well because Shatner did a piss poor performance in that skit, but the point remains. That phrase has been repeated so often, I've heard that as recently as a month ago in relation to this concept. Now, we'll come back to that, but I just wanted to mention that this is nothing new, okay? That's the only point I wanted to make there. Yeah, Shatner actually regretted that sketch. He hated doing that. It's probably why he did such a piss-poor performance, honestly. Anyways. So let's get to the episode proper. I love the bit where the dude's eating his food and the food gets knocked away by the sundae that what's-her-face threw. It's like, he just shrugs and starts eating the sundae. Because I gotta be honest, I'd be tempted to do the same thing. I mean, I wouldn't. I'd be like, whose is this? But, you know, nom, nom. That got a chuckle out of me. I'll give you that one. Yeah, free sundae. Sweet. Such a waste of delicious desserts, though. Now, this is kind of a weird cold open because it doesn't indicate much and it doesn't present much. It doesn't do what a cold open is supposed to do. What it does do, however, is it does immediately check my continuity mind because I have a mind for that kind of things, and I know I'm not alone. I know I just kind of talked about this, but you ever see that quote from Rick Berman about how nobody could ever possibly... Actually, I think it might have been Kurtzman. It's one of the two jackasses. About how nobody could ever possibly keep all of Star Trek continuity straight. I am not unique. Some people just have... My mother calls this Trivial Pursuit brain. Some of us just have that kind of memory. And I bring this up because the moment she said, you know, friendship is a thing worth fighting for, it just... Hey, I remember that! Because I did. Because I've got Trivial Pursuit brain. And again, I am not alone in that. So, it's like, okay, cool. That makes sense. And then she remembers it. She goes and finds the friendship journal. Okay, cool. You know how you can tell this is a Larson script? There is so much continuity here, I stopped counting. I know you already made that joke, Ross, but it's true. I stopped counting. I'm just going to add 20 continuity, or 10, excuse me. I said 10. I meant 10. 10 continuity counters, because it's just... It's all over the place. There are so many continuity points in this episode. It is everywhere. We're just gonna dump the bag and move on. Yeah, Larson's the continuity. You remember, what was that episode? The season 3 finale. That was supposed to be the series finale. I remembered not liking that episode until I did analysis mode, and I was like, oh my god. Because it was like continuity of the episode, you remember? Tied up all kinds of things from all 3 seasons. That was awesome. Anyways. So, back to the episode. Lots of continuity. Twilight offers to sell her friendship journal unedited. Problem number 1. No. No. Never do that. If you are a writer or a producer, or if you make something, never just put the raw product out there. Ever. Ever. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Of course, then it becomes super popular. Yeah, and she just shows up. Here, have some books. Okay, sure. No, it's believable that Twilight wouldn't think about that. I'm just pointing it out to anyone else because I know a lot of people are aspiring writers, and nowadays it's easier to publish books than it ever has been because Amazon and digital books. So, no. Anyways, so she becomes super popular because the book, which is kind of silly, but believable. You know, this is one of those one loop kind of a things here, because. Wouldn't they already be super popular? Shouldn't they? I mean, isn't there another episode this very season about them being super popular? The airship tour episode that I barely remember, but I know it's there. Whatever. So they become super popular. Cool. This then leads to 6 minutes in, and we meet our first super fans. Now, I'm using my terminology clearly here. Okay? Super fans are... I could be considered to be a super fan for several things. You know why? Because I have a Pokemon plushie. Or 3. I got Leaf, I got Wave, I got Quick over there, right? That qualifies me as a super fan, and I'm comfortable with that because there's actually nothing wrong with being a super fan. So being a super fan just means you're really into something. That's all it means. Being a mega fan is officially when you take it too far. And again, I used that terminology earlier on purpose. We'll cover that a little bit as we go. But the point is, the super fans show up and they're just like, hey, can you please sign this? I've got, this is the copy that I keep sealed. There's nothing really wrong with that. And they haven't gone over the line yet, right? However, there's a reason I so often use the phrase, within reason. You ever heard me say that? Yes, you have, because I say it constantly. And if I don't say it out loud, I say it internally. There's nothing wrong with water. Oh, Ultra fans are much worse, Ect. We're going to bring those up, too. Because there are Ultra fans in this episode. And that's bad. But let's build up to this. So. Next thing we have is Psycho fan. Psycho is a modifier, not a clarifier, if that makes any sense. So you could be a Psycho Super, Psycho Mega, or Psycho Ultra. Sense, Mike? Or just a Psycho fan. You know, it's a modifier. It's an additional adjective. Pinkie Pie is there. People have read her things and think of her as... Let me just pull out the quote here, because the quote word for word is, "There's Pinkie Pie, the funny one." Now, honestly, that right there pretty much solidifies what this episode should have been about to me. It kind of is. In fact, I would argue that the majority of the point of the episode is about that exact point. Surface level. Not actually looking at the details. Not actually looking at the nuance. Presuming that WoW and Final Fantasy XIV are direct competitors to each other. This just keeps coming up. Pinkie Pie is not the funny one. I think we've made that point extremely clear. Some of the most interesting character analyses we've done in this show has been of Pinkie Pie. We just had one recently with the Yak episode. Remember that? Pinkie Pie is someone who is an emotionally thin person who wants to spread joy as far and wide as possible, as often as possible to the people around her because of her constant fear of losing this thing that she likes. She is someone who also, this is funny because this ties into the exact same concept here, she has an understanding that it requires nuance, care, and specific application to accomplish that. She can't just tell a joke and it works. Instead, she has to, okay, well, you like this and this and that, but you don't like this. So if I do this and this, then this might work for you. So, but this is amusing, and I don't know if this was on purpose. These people, unless she's slanderized, which happens, and I usually ding the episode for that. And I do, because that is character assassination. Someone who writes Pinkie Pie as the funny one is missing the point. Anyways. So these people who are looking at the surface level are not correctly understanding someone who, by her very nature, looks past the surface level. It's wonderfully ironic there. Now, this is a good time as any to mention that the construction of this episode is very classic Larson. It uses a narrative trope, which I don't know what it's called, where this is your main protagonist, this water bottle here. And you want to do as much establishing and as much exposition as efficiently and quickly as possible. You also want this to be a bit of an ensemble piece, right? So what you do is you have your viewpoint character, basically where the camera is locked, move through each of these individual little story arcs quickly and efficiently. This allows you to be like, here's this bit, here's this bit, here's this bit. Lots of establishment, lots of exposition, very quickly, very efficiently. It also means you get to artificially, artificially is the wrong word. It means you get to ensure that things don't conclude. Rarity's story arc doesn't conclude because Twilight doesn't have a chance to. She is pulled off to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So the camera moves on, and their story arcs are allowed to stay on pause so that the idea is you can either conclude them later, if you're doing a long-term thing, or you can tie all the arcs into one thing, which is what they do in this episode. This is good narrative construction and classic Larson. So, this is when Starlight shows up and threatens the guy. Probably one of the best scenes so far. Then this leads to ponies canceling their orders. How many of you are familiar with the term canceling? No jokes here. Jokes are gone. I'm going to use a different word from canceling, and I'm going to use it very specifically. Exiling. This is not a new concept in human culture, just like my previous point. There is a reason why for the over overwhelming majority of human history, being exiled is something that has been a horrific thing. It's true millennia ago, centuries ago, and frankly, it's true now. How many of you, I hope the answer is no one, either you yourself or know someone who was kicked out of their house? Probably by their parents. I'll raise my hand, because I do know someone who had that happen to them. Being exiled is still a problem. And it still causes problems for pretty much the exact same reasons it always has. We are social creatures who kind of rely on being a part of the whole. Even if we don't actively interact with other people every day, we need that. We need that infrastructure. Being canceled, or boycotted, or exiled, or whatever other word you want to use there, is an attempt to try and artificially chop that off. Prevent them from having access to that infrastructure. It is in many ways, in every way, let me be very clear about this. It is in every way an attack. It is an attempt to cause deliberate, violent harm to someone else. It is a cruel thing. I agree with that. Now, the extent and severity of that obviously depends, because that's life. It depends on the circumstance. In some cases, the people deserve to be exiled, because there are horrible people in the universe. And in some cases, they do not. I have actually done research on 2 specific individuals recently who an attempt was made to cancel them. One of them managed to bounce back, and one of them didn't. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to dip my toe into that track. But I mention that because one of them managed to bounce back, and one of them didn't. One of them is still effectively absent a career because of something that was not true, because someone decided they wanted to exile them, and they succeeded. Now, I could talk about this topic for another hour, so all I wanted to mention is that this is what was going through my head as I saw people who decided to exile Rarity. This woman runs multiple extremely successful fashion shops in multiple cities and has effectively reached the conclusion of her career. Now, I'm pretty sure this will never come up again, and that's probably a good thing. But I want you to really think about the idea of Rarity, both financially and personally, being exiled. Really think about that. Think about the social pony who loves interacting with people, who spends social currency, who is all part of society and culture and blah, 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 who also relies on a steady source of income from her 3 successful shops to keep herself going, with intention, from everything I've seen, to continue expanding. She hasn't slowed down. So that's Boop and Boop. Those are 2 very difficult, dangerous, and personal attacks on her. It's played off for laughs, and Tabitha St. Germain is amazing, as she always is, but this is actually kind of terrifying. And that's why I say that it's probably a good thing that this one thing is not continuity. Because if this came up later, if this was a recurring thing, this would be bad. It could be a good story arc. In fact, it's not a bad idea for a story arc. You know, have her try to recover from this. But yeah, Rarity responds to this much worse than anybody else would, and for good reason. We also see a little bit of how each of them are almost... It's like a GM sat down and said, okay, I'm going to figure out the worst possible fan to throw at you. And I keep saying fan in that specific way because you can't see it, of course, because I'm speaking, but there's quotes around that word. We'll get to that later. Like I said, we're building up to this. So, Rarity is ostracized. Rainbow, yeah, exactly, Rascal. Rainbow has the people who are dumb jocks who constantly insist on taking her attention all the time and not letting her do anything at her own pace, which is a very Rainbow thing. Fluttershy has people actually corner her and bully her verbally. Yeah, Rainbow has fans like her parents. I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And of course, Pinkie Pie has people who aren't Actually Smiling. Someone earlier brought up in chat the idea of what's your favorite song. I mentioned Smile is my second favorite. The whole point of that song, and I swear it's relevant, is Pinky Pie wants to make people smile. Not fake smile. Actually smile. Having a bunch of people who laugh at everything you do, that sounds kind of like hell to her. Because she's failing at both of her primary character points there. Yeah, you've known me for years! Wow. So, let's go ahead and move up to the next point. And I've kind of been building up to this. Let's just go ahead and smash this right in the face. Fans, right? We've talked about super fans. Let's talk about mega fans. Mega fans, well, we've just given 3 examples of that, haven't we? The boycotters, the people who are bullying Fluttershy, and the people who are basically stalking Rainbow Dash. But you'll notice I specifically didn't mention Applejack. That's because the people with Applejack are not mega fans. Those are ultra fans. No, really. That's bad. Like I said, mega is already over the line. Ultra is call the cops territory. There's a reason why quite a few YouTubers and streamers go out of their way to not release their personal information, their addresses, they stream through VPNs, etc. Because they don't want someone showing up at their front door. Because that's happened. You know what shows up? You know what happens? If a popular YouTuber or a popular streamer has someone show up at their front door? They call the cops. Again, it's played for laughs. It's played for laughs. Hey, I can't let out my family. But no, people literally trying to move in. You're the only person I have. You're the only family I have. That's happened recently. I will go ahead and admit in private that part of the reason, not the only reason, of course, but one of the 7 or 8 reasons why I wanted to move out and no longer live with my sister and my niece is because I was afraid of that. If someone shows up here, it's just me. I'm good. We cool. If someone shows up here and my baby girl is there, so then we get to the point where all the fans, I said I'm building up to a point, I'm still building up to it here, are out, arguing about which pony is best, which is stupid because it's obviously a rarity. And are Pinkie Pie and AJ related or what? Is there a rank higher than Ultra? No. Because Ultra is the highest category. After that, you just add modifiers like Psycho. Psycho Ultra, which thank God we don't see in this episode because I don't think that concept exists in Equestria, is something that's also actually happened. There's a song, I don't remember, it's one of the rappers. He did a song about this, and it was a song about a fan of his who killed his wife over this. That is a Psycho Ultra fan. Yeah, that's not cool. Anyways. Moving on. This sucks. I think they're related. Did that actually happen? Yeah. So, one of my favorite little tidbits is this bit where Fluttershy, it's okay, he killed himself too, so I gotta try and make a joke out of it. There's this bit where Fluttershy, there's this Fluttershy fan wearing all the Fluttershy paraphernalia, and one person says, "How could you ever be a fan of Fluttershy? She's too unrelatable." And the fan is just kind of shrinks away. I actually liked that. That was a good gag. But we should probably go ahead and build up to and conclude with the point I've been making this whole time. That this song slaps! My God! I never heard this song before, or at least I have no memory of it, but damn, that was actually a good song. And of course, it has something that I need out of a good song. Music's great and all. Excuse me, vocalized music is great and all. But what really elevates a song is the subject matter. Even the best written, performed song ever that's about, coconuts, deedly dee, bad example, won't get into the upper tier for me. It has to be a good song and have good lyrics, and this is both. We're Not Flawless is an awesome song. I'm putting it in my top 6, my top tier. I've got a list. I've been keeping track. Not sure where yet. I'll have to listen to a few in comparison, but it's definitely going in that top tier. Anyways, awesome song, awesome lyrics, but it does some awesome stuff and absolutely does not fit in this episode whatsoever. Hang on. Let me rewind for just a second. I would argue, and I'll admit this is getting into semantics, that super fans, mega fans, and ultra fans are not fans. Hence why I kept making that emphasis earlier. Someone earlier in chat made the comment that these mega fans are people who are not actually interested in the work. They don't enjoy the work. They're just here to impose their will upon it. I've used 2 terminologies in the past. One is fanboy, one is hate boy. Now, I intend absolutely both of those as insults, but I also apply them differently. You'll notice I don't use those terms that much anymore because most people misunderstand me, and I don't want that to happen. Communication is a good thing after all. So, a fanboy, I'll come up with a new term later, is someone who likes something, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. I need to argue with you and debate you with it so you understand how wrong you are for not liking the thing that I like. A hate boy doesn't like something, and oh, it's disgusting, and how dare you not like this? What's wrong with you? You get the idea. Those are fanboys and hate boys. Again, I'll come up with a different term for that later. But that is what we're seeing here. And you know what that is? That is the vocal minority. Now, I don't know this with total certainty with regards to MLP. Remember, and I made this point earlier, I have no real exposure to the MLP fandom other than you all. I haven't even seen any of that on YouTube. Like, I don't get a lot of people on YouTube. I get a couple of you. I read your comments. You're awesome. But, most of what I get is the people who are currently here in stream. You're awesome too, by the way. Don't mistake. But the vocal minority are called that for a reason. The silent majority is called that for a reason. Let me talk about a couple of fandoms I do know very well. Warcraft, Doctor Who, Sonic, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy. Oh, I've got one. Star Trek. I've been part of the Star Trek fandom community, culture, since I was 4. Since I first started watching TOS with my mom. And yeah, the vocal minority is exactly that. One of the things I think the episode does absolutely best is the fact that there's this point where there's all these people and they're all arguing and they're all obstinate and they're all a problem. And they are. Those people are a problem. Those people, and I'm going to say it that way, and that's intended to be an insult, those people are a problem. Fans are a problem. Definite quote-unquotes. So don't misquote me on this. And yeah, I've seen fans like this in every fandom I've ever interacted with. There's more that I haven't listed. I haven't even talked about Star Wars. Let's not even get into Star Wars. But yeah, it's the same damn thing with sports teams, too. For there's a general rule. For every one person you hear ranting and raving, there's 9 people behind them who are just enjoying the show. That is a long-standing rule which has never been proven wrong, or at least it's never changed, is probably a better way to say that. That hasn't shifted in the last, 60 years or so, since that was first coined. And I bring that up because if the episode just focused on the vocal minority, screw up my words here, then this episode would actually piss me off quite a bit. But it doesn't. Because what happens is they say this big, awesome song, right? It is a pretty good song. I like it. There's some great lyrics here. They say I'm a big shot, that my ego's the size of a whale. My confidence comes off as cocky, but it gives me the courage to fail. Because a lot of people don't understand the difference between arrogant and confident. Now, Rainbow absolutely dips into arrogant periodically, but overall she is a confident person. Right? Yeah, that's Dash to a T. Scroll down a little bit more here. We've got another one I really liked, which is Pinkie Pie. Ponies think I'm all bubbles and laughters, that I don't seem sincere. I should point out that we've had 2 entire episodes about Pinkie being responsible. I might joke around a little too much, but I'm just so happy you're here. Like, again, right? There's some really... I'm not going to read the whole thing. I actually pulled up the lyrics over just so I wouldn't have to write them down. This song is a good song, and it gets across the point that most of these people are only looking at the surface level, and most people aren't really looking at the... They're not... This is going to sound elitist, and I don't care. They're not fans. They're not enthusiasts, which I think is actually a better word for this. They're not. They're here for the surface level. And they're here to laugh or argue or be a fanboy. I like this and therefore you like this. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Or a hate boy. I don't like this, you don't like this. Bounce, bounce, bounce. And those people exist, and that's life. So after doing this great song, I actually like the fact that the fans are still... And then they go inside and then they see 2 enthusiasts. The 2 kids who actually read the book and actually took it to heart and actually read into it and went further than the surface level. You know what's funny? One of the biggest points this episode has going for it, its main narrative point, in my opinion, is the difference between surface level and nuance, right? The reason I bring that up is because it didn't occur to me until I was writing up my notes at the very end that they do this at the very beginning. It's in the cold open. I'll judge a book by a cover as much as I want. Thank you. Remember that little throwaway gag? Yeah. But I do like that they bothered to show that there were 2 actual enthusiasts who actually liked the book and actually took it to heart. This is another reason why I tend to mentally disassociate myself with fandoms. Not because I'm not a fan, not because I'm not an enthusiast, but because the term fan has so much baggage associated with it these days because of this vocal minority problem. Because I'm not in that. I have been. I will admit it. Not proud of that. I have been a fan before. Trek. I'll go ahead and admit that too. Yeah, I was an idiot. I'll admit it. I was an idiot. But I didn't like being like that, and I didn't like the arguing. Thankfully, I don't enjoy arguing, so that just kind of helped push me out of that pretty quickly. I actually distinctly remember... I probably shouldn't tell you the story. There's a time when a friend of mine and I were having an argument, and at one point, basically what boiled it down to was I was sick of arguing about it, and I was like, okay, you keep telling me I'm wrong. Why do you think this way? It was about an episode of TNG. I'll just go ahead and give that away. That's all you get. And he was like, what do you mean? And it just kind of threw him completely for a loop. What do you mean? Why do you think this way? Why do you feel this way? And so I approached it from a perspective of trying to understand him, and that's kind of been my approach ever since. Because it worked. Anyways. Now, speaking of understanding, again, I absolutely see why people would be pissed off at this episode. Again, I do think this is a good episode. But this was incredibly badly timed. And honestly, the actual message of the episode is a little bit too buried in the fans are crazy, ha ha. So the presentation is a little bit lacking. And I think that does absolutely drag the episode down. To be blunt, I actually think they should have given a little bit more screen time to both, you know? Oh, the timing doesn't affect the rating, but I still think the presentation affects the rating. And it does drag the episode down, absolutely. After all, I'm not part of the timing. I wasn't there for that. What's more important, the argument or the reason? Good question. I do think there's absolutely some good stuff in this episode. The song is an obvious point. There's a lot of decent nuance and presentation. Tons, just a bucket of continuity smashed all over everything. But I don't think I could go above orange for this one. It's not purple. It doesn't have purple status for me. Because its focus is wrong, as I think I've said several times now. Orange, I could absolutely see. I think this is an above average episode. I think. I can get on board with that idea. The song slaps. That's actually what my notes say. So what happened was I type pretty fast, but I tend to type notes after an event. So I'm typing up notes for the scene right before the song starts. So I'm like, type. And I was typing up my notes about the difference between super, mega, and ultra fans. And, and as I'm typing, we're not flying, the song starts up. And in the middle of typing, I just type, okay, this song slaps. And then went right back to my notes. It's a good song. It's a good song. I'll have to re-listen to it and my other favorites to see where it lists. I might actually shuffle In Our Town up a bit. I'm not sure. I'll have to think about that. That's an interesting question, Lord Harriman, but I would say that's a super fan. And honestly, based on the way that episode went, I would say he is an enthusiast. He's kind of like an in-betweeny, He's kind of drifting. But he did actually enjoy the works, and he did actually want to share that, and blah, blah, blah. Now, that being stated, he certainly had his issues, and he never stalked A.K. Yearling. He never actually tried to argue her down about how stupid and dumb she is, etc., etc. Either way, I think we're going to go with the thing that you just said, and the you, I mean me, which is this. Orange. Now, I did a little bit of digging. Part of the reason this episode went live a little bit late is because I did a little bit digging on this one, because behind the scenes. I was unable to find who actually rewrote this episode. There is no other writer credit I could find for this. Now, that's normal. The overwhelming majority of times... so, for those of you not aware, in Hollywood... you don't actually, it's not legally required to credit a rewriter. You ever heard of the phrase unscripted rewrite? That's this. Or, uncredited, why did I say unscripted? Uncredited rewrite. This episode got an uncredited rewrite, and I have no idea who did it. So we're going to go ahead and list this as a M.A. Larson episode. No, ghostwriting is a little bit different. Ghostwriting is another category. But we are going to put this under Larson because I don't have anywhere else to put it, is really what this boils down to. The original idea wasn't his. The original script was his. The final script wasn't his. How much of that is his episode? Like I said, it clearly does have his fingerprints on it. So... yeah, the skeleton of the episode's absolutely his. The core premise is not. And the final script is not, as we've already stated. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and chop off the local recording before all the mega fans descend down my throat and kill me with sticks.